All right. Well, as Casey said, welcome everybody. We're really, really happy you're here. My name is Nicole. I'm head of community over at Trusted. And tonight we are going to be talking about how to thrive as a travel nurse. And if you're not familiar, that is Trusted's bread and butter. We do place nurses in travel positions all across the United States and all 50 states. We also have a host of other amazing resources for you, the modern nurse, whether it's blog posts or podcasts or interviews or resources. We really pride ourselves in having all those resources just for you to kind of excel in your career and also personally. So without further ado, we're going to talk about how to thrive as a travel nurse and a couple things that we'll talk through today. If you have any questions at all, please ask them through the Zoom chat per usual, and Casey will float them up to the speaker at hand. This is your time to listen, learn, and connect with each other as well as us. Any questions you have, we're really happy to answer them for you if we can. And then lastly, just get ready to thrive as a travel nurse. Here's the agenda that we're going to talk through. A quick welcome, as we've already done, talking about your new job and new city, thriving on and off assignment, finishing strong, a little bit of Q&A, and then of course we'll close it out. And without further ado, I will hand it off to the wonderful Brittany Greaves.
Hi guys, I'm Brittany. I am a PICU CVICU travel nurse. I've been traveling for 4 years. I'm a Raleigh native, but currently live in LA. I've kind of zigzagged across the country from East to West Coast, and then also have done a host of international medical missions. Fun fact, I'm a terrible TikToker, but we won't get into that. We'll talk about housing today, okay? So my journey has been pretty amazing. I think that traveling has opened up a host of things for me, but one of my favorite quotes is there's more magic inside of you. So if we can impart anything for you today, it's to just believe in yourself and your own magic. All right, so let's get into it. Housing. So a huge thing that I like to talk about is things that you should think about before you start travel nursing. So you have your first assignment and you're like, where am I going to stay? So the first things you should think about are pricing. What does your contract look like? How much money are you going to be making? One of the big mistakes that we as travel nurses make is we think, oh, we're making like 3 times as much more money. Okay, that's fine and dandy, but you should not spend 3 times as much more money on your housing. So whether it be getting a roommate or adjusting your budget, you should definitely look at your finances and everything before you start to look at housing options. Another point I like to stress is the area. Google has a lot of resources where you can actually look up the area before you get there. So i.e., you say, I'm going to San Francisco. What are the top areas that most people live in, the safest areas? Think about like where families are and stuff like that, because your safety on travel nurse assignments is your top priority. A lot of us travel alone. A lot of us are women, just being in the nursing field. So just make sure that wherever you're staying is safe. Another thing is to think about the distance from the hospital. So if you only want a short commute, maybe like 10, 15 minutes, then you should look around the hospital for the safest areas. But say like, for example, me in San Francisco, I actually worked in Palo Alto. Palo Alto is an hour away from San Francisco, but there's not really a lot in the area. So I actually decided to live in San Francisco, in the city, so I could thrive more off assignment than have, a 10, 15-minute commute to Palo Alto. Yes, the drive sucked, but it was what it was because off shift, I had a great time. Another thing that you can also think about is transportation. A lot of areas have public transportation. I know with COVID, things have changed a little bit, but it still is an option. So for me, for example, in New York, I took the train to work. It was an hour commute, but I got to read on the train. Sometimes there's buses and, metros and things like that. But that's another thing that you should also look into is public transportation. So you don't have to maybe drive. A lot of the websites that I've used all of these, are Furnish Finders, Airbnb, Craigslist, and Facebook housing groups. So this is an actual gem that a lot of people don't know about. So Facebook actually has housing groups. So for example, I wanted to go to Seattle. There's actually a travel nursing housing Seattle Facebook group, guys. So there's so many, people looking for us because we have stable incomes. They know that we're reputable and we're secure, so they love to host us. So I definitely just think that Facebook is a great gem. But the thing that I will also stress is make sure you read your contracts, because there's been times when I have messed up and I got in something that I wanted to get out of and I couldn't. So either that's you paying more money for, your mistake, or you just having to kind of suck it up for a little bit. So I definitely stress you looking at the clauses and things to see how you can get out of things just in case things don't work out for you. And that's another thing that I also stress is having a backup plan. Because just in case things don't work out, you need an exit strategy. So things also you shouldn't forget are deposits. A lot of times with furnished finders, you actually have to put down a deposit. And with Airbnb, there are a lot of fees attached to it for long-term renters. So that's another thing that financially you should also go ahead and be proactive about to save money either before you leave for your travel assignment or preparing for your next travel assignment. And then also, I also think about what is my payment schedule? Am I getting paid every week or am I getting paid every 2 weeks? Because what I like to do is I like to take out either, if I get paid every week, I take out a fourth of every check and I put it to the side to make sure I have my rent money. If I'm getting paid every other week, then I need to put, a little bit more of a heftier chunk to the side. But these are things that I just like to let people know, because a lot of times we just think, oh, it's a new city, it's a new town, I get to see all these things, and you forget about the logistics of it. So I am not the greatest packer. I will let everyone know that. I am not a minimalist, but for the travel nurses I know that are minimalist, they say it's the best thing that they ever did for themselves. What they do is they say, have I used this in the past 30 days? Or sometimes even, have I used this in the past, 2 weeks? So you can nail it down from there and scale, your items from there if you're leaving from home. But also think about the weather in the area. I stress San Francisco because it will throw you for a loop. You think that you're going there and it's going to be sunny because it's California. It is cold and windy. So I wasn't prepared, and I had summer tank tops, but I had to go buy jackets. So also look at the weather where you're going. Your finances. Something that I actually forgot about is in New York, they have a lot of tolls. So if you're going in and out of the city, you live in Brooklyn, but you're going into the city for work, you have to think, should I get an easy pass? And, they have those in DC as well. But like, should I get an easy pass? Is that going to be easier on me? It's automated coming out. Or, you have to get to a new city and you might not like the ply of toilet paper that your Airbnb host has. That's still an expense, guys. And sometimes we just think like, oh, it's fully furnished, it's gonna be great, it's gonna have these plush pillows and all these things. But what if it doesn't have, that specific thing that you like? These are things that you're gonna have to go out and buy before you, get settled in your place. And like I said before, you have to have a backup plan. I hate to tell this story, but it happened to me. I got to an Airbnb and it looked like a murder scene. No lie. There was blood, there was broken glass. It was insane. So I had to get out of that. I couldn't stay in that. So luckily I had a backup plan. I knew where the closest hotels were, and I had that money stashed away just in case I needed to stay a night there. Luckily for me, the Airbnb host put me up in the Westin, fancy, but either way, you just always should have money saved away and a little cushion for yourself and a buffer, because you do not want to get yourself in, a hairy situation that you weren't expecting. And then I also like to let people know to arrive to your assignment early. I am not a person who can get there on Saturday and my assignment, or Sunday and my assignment starts Monday. I have to get there like Friday, Saturday, spend the weekend there, do the route to work, figure out what stores are near me, things like that. Because how I feel is, you set the tone for your 3 months. Those first couple of days are the ones that are going to basically set the tone for the rest of your assignment. If you're running around rushing and then in the morning you have orientation, do you really think you're going to go in there with sound mind, body, and soul? No, you're going to be a hazard. So no, do not do that. I stress strongly to try to give yourself at least 2 days before your assignment starts. And then I also love to, Jeri's going to talk about it later, but travel guides. Always think about like what fun things are near you. So in case, you have like, you want to just go grab some wine, make sure you know where the closest wine bar is. So this is the biggest thing that I know a lot of people are going to ask about, your first days on your assignment. So you know that when you get to your assignment, there's going to be testing. So if you're for example, I'm a CVICU nurse, we have EKG testing. Sometimes you also have to do medication tests. And sometimes you have to do various tests for your specialty. So prepare yourself for those. Make sure your recruiter, you've talked to them about first day instructions, because they will give you those, where to arrive, what time, what you should be wearing, etc. Make sure you get those before the weekend starts, because a lot of times you can't get a hold of your recruiter on Friday. Also, you'll kind of on the first day, just kind of go to HR, get your badge photo, figure out parking and things like that. So that's a day that you can kind of ask the background questions and make sure your payments corrected and everything like that. And also you can also ask what they wear, because sometimes when you get your first day instructions, they may say like a certain color, but then you get on the unit and they're wearing t-shirts or something. So you can be a little bit more lax, but that's something that you can do on the first days as well. You only get 1 to 2 days of orientation. So be prepared to ask the questions that you need. If you want to know where the protocols and the policies are, you need to make sure you know where you can find those. If you like to know what time the manager gets in, you need to know where their office is. Ask those questions. What are they called? Sorry, your preceptor. Your preceptor is a good resource, and they'll kind of help you work through everything on your first days, but make sure you are prepared and you come with the questions that you need answered. A lot of times they'll also have you do a scavenger hunt around the unit. So, you learn where the crash cart is, you learn where the supply closets are, things like that. Of course, on your assignment, you can ask your buddies and your coworkers, but a lot of times I just like to go in and kind of look and gather myself before I, ask where things are. And then I already talked about policies, but on the floor, what I also love to stress is find who your allies are. There are people on your floor that love travelers. They'll always be the ones that'll help you out. They'll always be the first ones to, ask, are you doing okay? Do you need help with anything? So make sure that you befriend them and you start a bond or a good relationship with them, because they're going to be your greatest assets on the floor. And then also for your company, your liaison is a great tool. A lot of times they can bridge the gap between you and the hospital. So if you have various questions that you don't always want to go to the manager about, you can go to your liaison and they can help you through the process of things. So yeah, any questions?
I just realized I was still on mute. That was my bad. Let's see, guys. If you have any questions for Brittany, you can throw them in the chat. I know Margaret said, I was just going to ask, how are you received as an outsider? So how have you been typically received on units? Brittany?
Most of the time welcomed. They know that we're coming in there to help them out. So most of the time they receive us well. They're willing to help us, willing to, go out of their way sometimes. But the thing is that that's not always guaranteed. And I don't want to lie to you and say that it will. So be prepared for anything, because there are some people that just, don't like travelers. It is what it is, but it's not even the travelers. It's just them on the unit. So you probably have those type of people on your unit currently. So, but I say if you go in with a positive attitude and you show, that you're an asset for the floor, they can't hate you but so much,
Yeah, that's so true. Hannah asked, for the first day, do you usually wear scrubs or business casual?
It depends on the unit. So sometimes they'll say scrubs because you will actually go to the unit that day and tour the unit. I've always erred on the side of caution for wearing scrubs because I'd rather be prepared than ill prepared. But they'll make it clear whether it's business casual or scrubs. And most of the times it's both. As long as you wear closed-toed shoes in case you do go to the unit and you're in business casual, it doesn't really matter what you do choose. But I just kind of usually err on the side of scrubs.
Yeah, they'll include that in the first day instructions for sure, like Brittany said. Holly or Haley, I apologize. If you don't have experience with their EHR, can you take a class or modules before starting?
So some not before starting. So before starting, you actually do have like modules and their specific hospital-wide like orientation module things. But as far as like, if you're referring to like ACLS, PALS and things, it depends on the hospital. There are some times that I've actually gotten away with taking their own PALS for the free, but other times they don't allow you. So you have to actually see once you get on the unit, what kind of their policies and standards are for you as a traveler getting into their system. But this is a question that you can ask on the unit too. Because HR kind of deals with the overarching hospital, not necessarily just specifically you and the modules. And it's usually education, actually. That's the department that usually deals with the modules too. So that would be more of a question for them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I feel like a lot of people, a lot of times when I've traveled, they have actually provided us in-person training too, sometimes in that first day of orientation, but it just varies so much that you should always ask that unit educator. Let's see. Josie asked for orientation, is there a non-unit orientation also, or is it just floor orientation?
It depends on the hospital, but majority of times you have that first day is for the hospital. Some you may do IV pumps because that's like a standard across the hospital. You'll do IV pumps, kangaroo pumps, like Epic training, things like that. But it depends on the hospital because sometimes you can also test out of Epic and you actually don't have to go to the classes, which would be the standard, 8-hour, et cetera, class that you'll do like within the first couple of days before orientation. But all of this will also be in your first day instructions because for different people, you're going to have different things and different hospitals will be different.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that's all the questions for Brittany for right now. So we can probably move on to Jeri. Thanks, Brittany, so much. That was wonderful. You hit the nail on the head for all this.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jeri Ford. I have been a pediatric nurse for 8 years, and six and a half of those years have been as a traveler. I'm born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana, and actually just this year, thank you, COVID, I have signed on as permanent staff to Children's Hospital Los Angeles. It's going well so far. I'm still not sure how I feel about it. I'm a traveler at heart. It's been the best thing ever. So maybe catch up with me in about 6 months or so, and I'll let you know if I'm ready to go back to the travel world or not. I also am co-founder of a private baby nursing company called Baby Whisperers, LLC. Basically, we match pediatric nurses, NICU, PICU, anybody with experience that's actually a nurse with newborns and their families. We can do like part-time, full-time. Anyway, if that's something you're interested or just want to know more, you can find me on Instagram and send me a message and I'd be happy to talk about it. Also, my fun fact is I'm a huge true crime junkie. So if you ever need a case solved, I'm your girl for free. Okay, so my quote, there's some cool pictures over the years of places I've traveled. My quote says, if you can't make friends, buy a piñata. So that's a very long story, but basically when I was at my first assignment in Dallas, I feel like I didn't have that many friends. It was brand new to me, as I'm sure many of you will probably feel. It was a total joke. I was with one of my other friends, the only girl I really knew, and I saw this lovely woman, this piñata at a thrift store for like 50 cents. I bought it as a joke. And I was like, well, maybe she'll be my friend. And literally she's 7 years later, here she is. And so it's like a running joke. All my friends know her. They're like, is Darla okay? So anyway, it's like, it's a thing now. So anyway, that's why my quote is that. Okay, so I want to start by asking you guys what thriving in your assignment means to you. So go ahead and you can put it in the chat, or you can just kind of think about it to yourself. So many people have touched on, and I know Brittany has covered it a little bit too, you kind of want to determine your goal for the assignment. And along with that is what kind of thriving means to you. So just kind of think about that because it means a little bit something different to everybody. Can go next. So I'll talk a little bit about on shift, how to thrive in your assignment on shift. So learning on the job. I feel like the first three kind of go together. Be open to new processes, be flexible and a team player, and never say, at so-and-so, we did it this way. So I am totally a huge culprit of saying, oh, at so-and-so, we did it this way. I mean, it took years for me to kind of reel back on that because I just want to relate to them so much. But if you think about it from their perspective, you're new. And so they're like, we don't care what you did it or how you did it. You're here now. So it might come from a good place, but to them, they're kind of like, oh, maybe she's a snob. So just try to reel back on that a little bit, read the room a little bit, see if maybe they ask you what your opinion is, which sometimes they don't, and just go from there. And of course, our goal as travelers is to be flexible and to be a team player. We're there to fill a void. And so if you come in with really rigid rules and rigid expectations, that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for someone to fill in those needs and be flexible. So you'll get a lot more brownie points if you stay flexible and open and have a good attitude. I have on there, take advantage of advanced training. So just me personally, I know there's a lot of cases like this in different specialties. Within pediatrics, I know that I was offered the opportunity to kind of cross-train to NICU. And even though I don't see myself doing NICU for the rest of my life, it's super awesome to have one on my resume. It makes you more well-rounded. And in the future, if I do decide I want to travel again, NICU actually gets paid a little bit more typically. So that's awesome. Also, I think another example was one place offered to train me on peritoneal dialysis. And now at my new job, that's something that I can already do. And that's a unit that I'm on. So it worked out really well. So that's something really cool to do, is to take advantage of those training opportunities, since they are more few and far between than if we were permanent staff. It's good to keep those in mind. Also, stand up for your skill set. It's really hard sometimes to be the new person because they don't know what you can do. So I know, it's happened so many times, but another example is they were stressing one night on a unit about who's going to take care of this trach collar change because no one on that unit was like a transplant unit and they've never done a trach. And I'm like, I've done a million of them. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah. So just don't be afraid. They don't know what you can do. And sometimes they assume that you just don't know how to do anything. So don't be afraid to stick up for yourself and say that you know what to do. And then you can make some new friends and do their trach collar change if that's your thing. Don't get involved in politics. I mean, that can be the same for like any office or any job anywhere, but definitely don't as a traveler. It's not a good idea. You want to leave smooth sailing. You don't even want them to know you were there except for positive things. So just don't get involved. And it's amazing some of the things people will end up telling you because you're a traveler. It truly amazes me, some of my assignments, some of the information I have received, but just take it, put it up here, don't do anything with it. Then of course, bullies, kill them with kindness and assertiveness. I hope that none of you ever have to face bullies, but the reality is that you will probably. And just like Brittany said, some people love travelers and some do not. So you just have to kill them with kindness. You don't have to be a pushover, but you just kind of roll with it and try not to take it personally, because most of the time it has literally nothing to do with you. I had an assignment in Michigan and I found out they were not super nice to me at first. I just felt the coldness the second I was there. I ended up finding out later in the assignment that the whole office, none of them wanted this physician to hire a traveler. They thought they could do it themselves. So I walked into like a mess and didn't even know it. So just always keep in the back of your mind, it's typically nothing personal, and just try to kill them with kindness. And by the way, I ended up winning them over at the end of the assignment and they threw me a big party. So joke's on them. Number 2, protect your license. I have that. Of course, that goes for any job as a nurse. I think that's kind of self-explanatory. Never be afraid to stand up for yourself. As travelers, sometimes we're put into situations. We're put into situations that we might not be comfortable with more frequently than if you were core staff. So anyway, just don't be afraid to stick up for yourself and say, hey, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm willing to train and for you to give me training on it, but I'm not going to take that patient alone. So that's how you can kind of word it. And then of course, exit gracefully. My whole point to this is that you never know, even if you plan on never coming to that facility again and you hate it, you never know when you could possibly need those people. I mean, here I am a couple years later and I'm starting this business and I need to know nurses all over the country. And if I would have left any assignment on kind of a salty note, there's an entire city of nurses, of peds nurses that I could have used that I wouldn't have. So you always want to leave on a good note, leave a place better than you found it. Be prepared for an exit interview. Sometimes they usually don't offer you one, but if they do, be prepared. And then I like to just praise some staff when you leave. That's always, nurses love praise. We love to hear that we did a good job or that we're good to work with. So I always like to just kind of give people recognition on my way out the door, and then that leaves a good impression. Next. So more how to thrive on off shift stuff. Some general tips I have. I mean, I could go on and on about these, but for the sake of time, I won't. Of course, reach out if you guys have questions. But my biggest thing is to be aware of expectations. That kind of coincides also with don't judge based on the first assignment. Everyone expects travel nursing. I mean, you hit the door running. The second you sign up as a travel nurse, you have a million friends. You're off doing the most extravagant things. It takes work, just like everything else does. So just kind of beware of your expectations, because I think if you have them all the way up here and your assignment was only kind of maybe down here, it makes you feel like it's not for you. So just kind of take that into mind. And then, of course, don't base it off of your first assignment. I know so many travelers who their first assignment was terrible, and so they just wanted to quit. And then they would have missed out on all the awesome opportunities and travel assignments that happened afterwards. So just something to think about. And then combating homesickness. I struggle with this still 7 years later. My biggest advice is just always have something to look forward to. If you're super homebody and are far away from your family, just always have a trip planned home that you're looking forward to, or always have a trip planned where they're coming to visit you. So there you go. Okay, now the art of making friends. So kind of like I said before, so you have to work at it. My biggest advice is do not expect people to just walk up to you. I know so many travelers who are like, I just don't make friends as easily as you do. I'm like, you think that people just walked up to me and said, hey, can you be my friend? That's totally not how it works. You have to almost be borderline annoying to get things done, which brings me to my next point. Don't be afraid to be annoying. I mean, you don't want to push it really far. I mean, you don't want to be super annoying, but you don't want to be so afraid and so in your shell that you can't, go out there on a limb and ask people to hang out. I always kind of have like a 3 strikes you're out rule. I'll ask somebody that I think is cool or might be interested or seems interested 3 times. And if 3 times they've said no to me, then I'm done. Because at 4 or 5, if you're getting up into it's just a little bit weird. So that's kind of what I do. And usually by the 3rd time, they're great. So, or they end up working, or if not, then they're lost. So that's kind of my rule. And then of course, the easiest way to make friends is through groups. Other travelers are like key. If you can find assignments for your first couple times where there's known for a ton of travelers, that's the way to go, because they're in the same boat as you and they're way cool and fun. Facebook groups, of course, meetup groups. Bumble actually has Bumble Friends option. I've actually done all of these and they're all great. Say yes to everything. Don't be afraid to go out of your comfort zone, even if it's not a restaurant you would totally pick or like a bar you would totally pick. Just say yes if someone invites you and go from there. And then, of course, if all else fails and you're really striking out with a group, which just might happen, don't be afraid to do things alone. I've done some of the coolest things on like just exploration days by myself, and I'm so glad that I did it instead of just being alone and being sad for myself. My favorite part of each new city is making a bucket list. I still have every single bucket list of every city I've traveled to. Yelp, Google, TripAdvisor, All Trails, trusted community guides, and Instagram are all places I go to start making these bucket lists. I mean, I'll literally type in Google, for example, top things to do in LA, whether it's touristy attraction or not. I'll just look at all of them and I'll write all of them down, because you never know if you're having a friend come in town that might really like museums. You might hate museums, but maybe your friend wants to do that. You never know. Restaurants, bars, clubs, sports games, concerts, all those things listed right there. I listed out every single one of them just because I know some of them you might not think of. Historical things. Not everyone's super into that, but I know that in Dallas, for example, touring the JFK Museum was one of the coolest things I've done. So it just kind of depends on what the city's known for. And I truly just make a huge list of everything that I could possibly even a little bit think is fun, and then kind of narrow from there. Take pics of everything is another piece of advice I have. I take so many pictures. I still feel like I don't have enough. I wish that I could have, had another picture of like my house in San Francisco or my room in San Francisco. Just take pics of everything, and you'll be happy you did. And then, of course, you become an unofficial travel agent. I feel like I should be like selling my friends all my bucket lists because they ask for it every time they go somewhere, like Hawaii. They're like, "I have my first time in Hawaii. I should probably charge, but oh well." They, yeah. So it's cool. You'll end up being like having the inside info of all these cities, and it's so worth it for if you ever decide you want to go back. And then finally, I know Russ will touch on a little bit, and actually Brittany touched a little bit on it in her presentation too. But we really want to drive home the fact that we also need to thrive financially, because I tell people, I just signed this staff job and now I can't live like Beyonce anymore. Travel nursing, you are going to make more than you have probably ever, or maybe will ever, and you have to really hone in on that and not go wild. I have done both, so I feel like I can tell you this. I have hunkered down and saved a ton of money like this year, and I have completely blown my whole assignment like in Hawaii. And you just have to really focus again on what your goal is for that assignment. Like Hawaii, I knew my goal wasn't going to be making money because it's a once in a lifetime thing. So I did all the things. I did all the tours. I swam with sharks. I did everything. And I don't regret the fact that I didn't save a penny. But there are other years that I'm like, maybe I could have saved a little bit more. So just always keep that in mind. Don't blow through your money. You can't live paycheck to paycheck because we have all these unexpected expenses that other places don't. So you have to keep that in mind, like rent and, shipping your car and all kinds of things like that. So, and then of course, last but not least, the best advice I got as a new traveler when I was in Dallas, she was a senior traveler, and she was like, get some kind of like rewards card. She told me the Southwest card, and it's one of my favorites. And I've used it. I usually literally all the time, and I get almost all my flights free every single year. I know some people like Chase, Sapphire, I believe was one. You guys can comment some of your favorites if you had them. But anyway, that's my biggest advice about that, is totally take advantage of those points. And I went through some of that kind of quick for the sake of time, but I totally can talk about any of this anytime, all the time. So if you guys have questions, let me know, or you can reach out to me on Instagram.
Jeri, you crushed it. We did great on time. We actually have some questions. So I know that some of us answered them in the chat, but I think I'd love to hear your perspective as well.
Okay.
This is for any of you guys, Russ, Brittany, Jeri, did any of you have liability insurance? This is something that I did not get for myself.
Liability insurance, no. I like personal for me as a nurse. I did not. I know they do recommend it. I don't know. I don't know if I was living the risky life, but I didn't personally.
I didn't carry any. No.
Okay, cool.
I think there's like two schools of thought there, and I was honestly probably just too lazy to look into it.
Most travel nurses I knew, not saying this is the right thing, but most nurses I knew did not carry their own liability insurance. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Nicole asked, do you recommend traveling nearby home for the first assignment to help work out the kinks without taking on every adjustment? So do you recommend that, Jeri, or no?
So that's a good question, because my first assignment, I did go kind of far away. And then my second assignment, I came back closer to home. And I don't think I recommend one over the other. It was good to be close to home, but I had more fun in the city that I was far away from. So it kind of depends on your personality, I think, a little bit. It's hard to answer, I think. I don't know if anybody has any other perspective. I personally wouldn't stay home just for the sake of adjusting, because I think if you learn quickest by getting thrown into something, I think so. But yeah, I don't know what the other hosts think.
It's partial to what you need and what you're looking for, but I'm kind of like a tough love person. Take the training wheels off. Go. Mm-hmm. Totally. So you got to kind of get out there, and you will kind of lean on your support system and all of that a little bit more if you're closer. But do what's best for you.
Totally.
You can also, go to a city where you have a support system at. Maybe it's not your home city, but if you have like a really close friend or a family member that you can rely on, it's always great to have. Mm-hmm. Or if you travel with a friend. I traveled with multiple friends throughout my 3 years of travel nursing. Let's see. This is a great question. Jessica asked, how do you respond when if you've gotten unsafe nurse ratio assignments for your shift?
Yeah, good question. I have fortunately done most of my traveling in California, so there are laws. But I know that there's been a couple times where I've been assigned something ICU level, and I'm not technically ICU trained, and I just tell them I've never done it, and I said I'm welcome to have some training on this, but today I've never had it, and I don't feel comfortable taking it, so I need to switch. And that can be hard, and sometimes there can be attitude, but you have to say it. And I think the more you do it, the better you'll get at it.
Absolutely. And if it's something that's consistently happening, I would connect with your nurse advocate or recruiter and let them know that it's unsafe, and see if you can kind of escalate it through your company as well.
For sure.
Let's see. So with the liability insurance, I don't know if we're going to know the answer to this, Margaret. Does any of the companies carry that for their travelers?
I do not think so. I don't know for sure. I just think that I don't think so.
Not that I'm aware of. Let's see. Yvonne asked, how difficult is it to get licensed in new states?
Ooh, it depends on the state. I mean, it totally depends on this new state or on the state. I know some states were so easy. I feel like I didn't even have to do anything and don't remember the process at all. And then like California, well, I mean, it'll take forever. So, and that just depends on the state. Once you do it a couple times, or at least once, you kind of get the feel for it, and it'll be not as big of a burden.
Yep, absolutely. And if you look in the chat, Russ also shared some a licensure guide. We have a compact state guide as well that we'll send in the follow-up email from this. So you can keep an eye out for that. That's super helpful. I was part of North Carolina. North Carolina was my primary license, which is compact. So I was able to work in a lot of states without having to do any paperwork, which was fantastic.
Also, I just would kind of like to say that it's also sometimes it's not just getting the licensure. A lot of times with the licensure, you have to do other things. So for example, for New York, you actually have to take an abuse class, and then there's one other class you have to take before you can even apply for the licensure. So just so you guys are aware, sometimes it's not just paying the fee and doing all the other things. It's like you actually have to do other things to get the license as well.
Great point. Yeah, fingerprints are something that I ran across a few times, and that was always tough. You want to make sure you do the fingerprints exactly the way they ask you to do them by someone who does them all the time, because I actually had a license delayed because they weren't exactly up to their standards. So that's a tip for you guys. Well, I think we probably should head on to the next section. So thanks, Jeri. You did amazing.
Thanks.
Hey, everybody. Let me close this window here. My name is Russ. I'm a critical care nurse at heart, and that's what I did at the bedside. Traveled for 2.5 years after getting a few years of experience under my belt. Now a nurse advocate team lead here at Trusted, formerly a nurse advocate, and just loving what we're doing here. What are some fun facts about me? I only have one listed. I have 9 siblings. Our names all begin with R, and to this day, it's still a mystery why our parents went that route. Maybe we'll find out this Thanksgiving. We'll see. Here's some pictures of my family and some of my adventures from traveling. I guess another fun fact is my wife and I and our 3 children live full-time on the road in our camper that you see there in that middle picture. And this January will be 4 years full-time. And something I always tell people when they're asking about traveling or just even becoming a nurse is like, this profession opens up the entire world to you if you're willing to go for it, which ties into my nothing ventured, nothing gained. Just similar to the feedback you just received on the last slide, like just jump into it. You're smart, you're capable, and you will not regret it. All right, I've got all the fun stuff. Mo money, mo freedom. To piggyback off of what my co-hosts have already talked about around finances, savings is so important. I realized it when I was traveling, just because it was instilled in me, early on, but especially now as a nurse advocate, I see it happen all the time. Like you can't, obviously everyone's situation is different. I'm not judging for that, but like it's really difficult to work contract work and be living paycheck to paycheck for a whole variety of reasons that I'll get into. But general rule of thumb is like have your cost of living times 3 months, so figure out like how much do I spend each month, and save up 3 times that amount. And when you get paid, pay your future self, meaning when you get that paycheck, set aside a certain portion, the portion that makes sense for your needs, and just keep it stashed. Don't touch it, pretend it doesn't even exist, because one day you may need it and it'll be there, and you'll be really pumped at the version of yourself that saved it for you. One of the key things with finances is like the freedom to choose. So while you're ending an assignment, you're looking for your next one. If you're living to paycheck, there's no opportunity for an extension on your current assignment. You're going to be forced into taking whatever offer comes your way first, instead of being able to look at multiple offers and decide what's best for you. And maybe the one you really want is a few weeks later of a start date. You can stomach that financially because you've already prepared for it. This also gives you the upper hand. You're not going to get bullied or leveraged into a situation where someone is deciding where your assignment's going to be, what offer you have to take. And that's the biggest takeaway I think with finances, is just like really set yourself up so that you're choosing what you want to do. One handy thing to keep in mind too financially is, let's say you're ending an assignment, no new offers are coming in. If you have a good relationship with your manager, with your unit, you can extend. It doesn't have to be the typical 13 weeks or 8 weeks. Like you can, I worked an assignment where I extended a week, and then I extended another, and then I extended another, just waiting for that offer to come through. And as long as you're transparent and open with the unit, they're usually down to do that. Resume updates. So one of the important things while you're on assignment, as you're becoming good friends with charge nurses, supervisors, educators, managers, preferably, is to develop that relationship so you can have that reference for the next one. A lot of facilities, now that I'm on the nurse advocate, the business side of it, I'm seeing like they require references from the last 12 months. And if you only have them from your staff job, you've done a couple travel nursing assignments, it's way harder to go back months later and ask for a reference than it is like while you're on the unit. Charge or hire, always. Letter of recommendation, while they're nice and they make you feel good, and it's nice paragraph format, kind of story style. A lot of facilities and the vendors that manage travelers for those facilities, they won't accept those. It has to be in a certain format. So find out what your agency does. At Trusted, we have like a little click of the button on your profile. You enter the manager, charge nurse, supervisor info. We send it over to them. It's meets, exceeds, not applicable. They just click little buttons and it's done in like 3 to 5 minutes. It's really not a hassle. And then it lives on your profile. You can take it with you wherever you go next. Another important thing to keep in mind is like if you're on a unit, you're learning, new pumps, new monitors, different devices, tools, even down to like certain different style of catheters, etc. Document that in your resume. Add it as a sub bullet, as a little aside, because if it's apples to apples and you have experience with monitors and whatnot that facility that you're applying to is looking for and the other person doesn't, you're probably going to have the leg up there. If you're floating to other units, document that, show them that you have a range of experience, you're willing to be a team player. If you're learning a new charting system, definitely want to remember that, because a lot of facilities now are requiring like Epic experience, Cerner, Meditech. And if you don't already have that, you'll get to a point where you do so many assignments, you don't even recall what you used at a former facility. So write it down while you're on assignment. And then unit info. So, what were the common types of populations you were seeing? What kind of surgical cases? Did you interact with residents? Did you interact with specialists? Just trying to really give the nuance of what an ICU is. Not just an ICU. There's so many different types. You really want to, dig in and highlight what your experience is. Insurance. This is a fun one. So coverage varies, from agency to agency. This is definitely something you want to ask about before even applying. You don't want to get to a point where you interviewed, the manager loves you, you're so excited, you get the offer, and then you ask about, oh, what's your insurance? And they don't have it, or it's not good until the 90th day, or whatever the situation might be. Because then you'll have to decline if it doesn't fit what your needs are. So definitely check, no matter what agency you're working with. Trusted's policy, we're day one medical, dental, and vision. And that's effective the second you step foot on the unit. And let's say, for example, a cool thing that we offer, your assignment ends November 16th. Your insurance is good until the end of that month. And you can do like a prepay option to cover those 2 weeks. And then after that, if you haven't found a new assignment with us or extended, the next thing you can do is COBRA. So this is available through any agency. It's a federal act. And you can elect it as soon as your contract ends. So if it ends, let's say November 30th, you have 30 days or 60 days, I believe, to apply, and it's retroactive. So even if you don't get approved until, let's say, the 40th day, it'll go back all the way to the day that you applied. And the big thing with COBRA, it is a little bit more expensive because you're paying 100% of the premium. Usually agencies are covering a portion of it, but with COBRA, you have to pay the full amount. And it's good up to 18 months. So it's a nice option if your agency has decent priced insurance, or you just can't find anything in the open market. So options for, my family and I, we carried our own insurance because after every assignment, I took like a month and a half off, and I didn't want to have a lapse, with children and whatnot. So we did like a health sharing program. Not for everybody. There's multiple options out there. You can also just go to your state's can't remember the term exactly, but basically, type in your state, find what options are available to you, and start doing the research. It's not fun, but it's a totally necessary thing to do. Man, I really ripped through that. Expected it to last longer. Any questions?
We actually have a couple questions.
Right.
Let's see. So Josie asked, how much time typically do you have in between assignments?
As much time as you can afford. So that goes back to the finance thing. There would be certain assignments that I would work almost purely because the money was amazing and I knew I wanted to take a big chunk of time off. So like I always had the month of December off for Christmas and family time, and I would set my year up so that, all right, I'm going to do one big money assignment right before this big chunk of time that I want to take off. Or if you're just looking to roll into the next one and keep on going, it's really up to you and how you plan things.
Absolutely. Let's see. Val asked, Russ, how do you deal with the tax home rule? So do you not get the untaxed housing stipend in an Airstream? How does that work?
This is a great question. Disclaimer, I'm not a tax professional. I have to say that. But so a general blanket statement is like, are you duplicating expenses? Then you qualify for stipends. And that doesn't mean I can be in an Airstream parked in a Walmart and collect those stipends, because technically I'm not duplicating expenses. I'm staying there for free. So what I did is, if I was at an RV park or staying privately with, just an individual off Craigslist or, Facebook groups, I would keep record of my receipts in case I ever got audited or needed to prove it some way.
Good info. Let's see. What are your nurse ratios as a step-down nurse traveler?
I was primarily a critical care nurse traveler, but I did, there was one assignment where I was duped and worked on a step-down unit, and it was in California. So it was incredible. I only had 4 patients. I was used to like 6 normally back in my staff job. So it really depends. California, I think they set it at a max of 4 and it's acuity based. So it just depends on how sick your folks are. But other states, I know it can get up there. That's a really hard answer a really hard question to answer, actually.
Yeah, there's a lot of variability there by state, facility by facility. How do you know if you're getting a good pay rate, housing, subsidy, and per diem?
Great question. You really need to do your research. So I always encourage people to shop around. And what I mean by that is like there's all sorts of, Facebook groups and pages where you can see what other agencies are offering for that same job, same facility, same time of year. And you can even look back historically and see like, okay, this is like pretty typical Phoenix rate. I'm good with this offer. There's also now calculators on our website. We have the match page, like all the pays up front. It shows you like what other travelers and staff are making in that area. And hopefully, ultimately you have a good relationship with your recruiter or your nurse advocate, and can really trust that, they're giving you the best they can give you, obviously, and still maintain as a business. And ask around, if you have traveler friends or just nurses in forms that you don't even know, just ask them, like, hey, is this a fair deal? And try to catch on to what's fair.
Great answer. And I can add to that too. Multiple agencies typically have access to the same job. So sometimes it's just as simple as comparing like what they're offering, and you can go with the highest one, which trust is usually the highest. Usually. Sorry, did someone say something?
It definitely usually is the highest one.
Let's see. Jessica asked, how far in advance do you look for your next travel assignment? That's a really good question.
It is. So usually the sweet spot is with about, if you're doing a typical 13-week assignment, about the midway point. So 6 to 7 weeks, I'm applying, because you'll get an offer and then have to onboard anyways. And if you're a good fit for the unit and you interview with the manager, they're going to be willing to wait a week or two. So that's generally, jobs are being posted about 4 to 6 weeks out from start date. That's for a whole variety of reasons, mostly budget related. But that seems to be the best time. Now, if you're hitting winter season and depending on your specialty, like right now, we're signing nurses for January starts, and obviously we're like 3 months away, but they're anticipating, okay, this is what we had last year. These are the flu trends. This is what COVID is doing. Let's ramp up so we're not in a hole when that time comes and we're scrambling and having to raise bill rates, etc.
All right, let's see. Josie asked, so Josie, can you clarify your question a little bit more? I know you asked, so we have to wait for offers from a travel agency after registering. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, but after you contact a travel agency or a recruiter, you'll be able to see kind of like what positions are available and then submit to those job postings. And then hopefully you'll be able to be interviewed by the nurse manager or someone on that unit. I don't know if that answers your questions, but just you can just drop it in the chat and let me know. Let's see. Hallie asked, are you told which units you can be floated to prior to starting a contract?
You should be, and that would be a question to ask both your recruiter or advocate, and additionally the hiring manager, should you interview. A lot of hiring managers honestly sometimes won't know the facility specific policies as it relates to travelers. So they'll say, hey, maybe, no, you don't have to float. And hopefully that's the truth. But sometimes the facility, which overrides the manager, will have a policy that, travelers are first to float for low census or what have you. So I would just bring that up proactively with your agency.
Okay, awesome. Let's see. This is a great question from Josie. Is it typical for nurses to go through several agencies at a time or just one?
I'll let Brittany or somebody answer this. Cottonmouth over here.
Yeah, so they're partial to trusted. So as a traveler, I worked with multiple. So trusted is one of them, but what I did personally is you have to shop around for rates. And then the reason that I actually ended up using a lot of different ones is because if I specifically really wanted to go to Arizona and none of my other agencies actually had Arizona, and one of, the ones that I wasn't really thinking about had it, I went with them because I really wanted to go to Arizona. But just like we all said before, you have to think about what's best for you. And if it's pay and you can kind of like maybe go to Arizona later, then you can, work with the company that you really like. And that's also based on your recruiters, if you really like your recruiters and et cetera. But of course, trusted is great, so you should work with them. But yeah.
So I totally agree with Brittany. Like Personally, what my kind of like rule of thumb was I worked with 2, because anything more than 2, I got overwhelmed. Not everyone's like that, but that was just me personally. I mean, we get enough calls from certain recruiters as it is. So more than 2, it got a little overwhelming, but I always left an option for a third, just like what Brittany said, if I wanted to really go somewhere like Hawaii, I really wanted to go to. So I kind of went off the wall with a company I had never used before and then came back to my regular company after Hawaii. So it kind of depends on you, but I usually just don't work with too many. I feel like you get a little overwhelmed.
Yeah, and as a trusted representative, I feel perfectly comfortable saying work with at least 2, just because it will give you more options to different jobs. Different companies have access to different jobs and positions in hospitals, so just be aware of that. And if there's somewhere you really want to go, like Brittany said, make sure you contact that company. But it's also helpful for you to compare rates. And if you find one that treats you a lot better than the rest, trusted, then you can just stick with us for the rest of the time. It's totally fine. It's just but I do recommend to start at having at least 2 companies. Let's see. Let me scroll down. Oh, Nicole asked, this is a good one for you, Russ. What types of work can travelers, spouse, partners do while on assignment in y'all's experiences?
Great question. So I guess it depends on their skill set, but I mean, for my situation, my wife stayed home with our children, but I had multiple, fellow RV nurse travelers whose husbands would do contract work. So they are handymen. They would just hop on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist and just find little odd jobs. And then eventually that would turn into more work and more work. So I think the key there is just researching ahead of time of what's in the area, what's available for short-term work, and just putting yourself out there to see what happens. And then there's all the digital work too, of course. Just really depends on skill set.
Awesome. So Octavia asked, is it okay to work with several agencies, which we have already answered, but she also asked, if so, how best to navigate and keep a good working relationship? So Octavia, I actually talked about this in the last event we did around travel nursing. So I encourage you to go back and actually watch that one. But the biggest thing for you to understand is that your recruiter's not your friend, it's a partnership. And so a good company, a good nurse advocate, and a good recruiter will want what's best for you. So if it's not an assignment with them at that time, they should tell you like, awesome, go do this assignment and come back when, and chat with us once you're done. So I think it's just to be open and honest with them. And if they're not there to support you, maybe they're not a good fit for you anyways. Let's see. So Margaret asked, maybe can you go through the process of what will happen after you apply?
Yeah, for sure. So when you find your agency, you find the job you want to apply for, your recruiter advocate will send your profile over to an external HR of sorts for that facility. They'll review it, then they'll push it through to the hiring manager if you meet certain requirements. And then it's up to the hiring manager, which just depends on their schedule and how quickly they're looking to hire, to review, say, hey, this person's awesome, let me give them a call. At that stage, you have your interview. If it goes well, they'll make you a verbal offer. After that, they'll make an official offer, which doesn't go directly to you, it gets pushed to your agency. And then from there, your nurse advocate or recruiter will call you, go over the offer details, get things sorted out that were not discussed in the interview. And from the offer stage, you say, yes, I want this, write me up a contract. You get the contract, you sign, boom, you're ready to rock. Well, you're ready for compliance, then you're ready to rock.
Awesome, thanks, Russ. All right, guys, well, it's actually been an hour already. I can't believe it, but I just want to do a huge shout out to our hosts tonight, Russ, Brittany, and Jeri. You all did wonderful. And I think Nicole might have a few closing words as well.
I do. Thanks, Case. Yeah, thank you everybody for showing up tonight. We're really, really grateful you're here. Hopefully you got all the awesome information you were hoping for. As you all know, we have lots of virtual events coming up, a few more for this year, and then we're already planning for next year. So we cannot do that without your feedback. So you will be getting a survey in about 20 minutes through email. Please let us know what you like, what you didn't like, what you want to see more of, all that good stuff. We really do read every piece of feedback that you have. So thank you for joining us tonight, and hopefully we'll see you all at the next event soon. Bye, everyone.